Good evening, everyone. It's live and uncut again. Lovely Friday evening for us in Great Britain today, or the United Kingdom now, as we're called, or were before. But anyway, there we go. Tonight's guest, I'm really delighted to invite. My guest tonight is Matthew Maddock. He's a commercial photographer, an accessory developer for Fuji cameras, and he runs a very successful Facebook group called Photomad for Fuji ex-users. So great delight to welcome, fresh from Photokina, literally about 24 hours ago, Matthew. Welcome to my show.
Thank you very much, Paul. Nice to be here.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you so much for accepting my invitation. Really great. We're going to get to Photokina later because from what I read on the website and all the information coming through, it was as good a show as Photokina always is, with new products being shown and great new stands. As everyone knows, I'm from that industry and I just love looking at superb exhibition stands. So let's start off at the beginning, Matthew, with photography. And how did photography start for you?
It's always been a big part of my life. I mean, my mum was a fairly keen amateur photographer and used to make us sit for hours in front of her SLR.
Right.
And I just I guess the passion sort of developed from there, really. And I spent quite a lot of time in my youth with cameras, and bought my first film SLR when I was about 11 from one of my teachers, and
Lovely.
Used to go through film
And did you study photography at school?
I didn't. No, it was never really
Right.
something that at that time I'd considered as a profession. So my background is really in IT.
Right.
But I did a lot of photography when I was at university, and I was in the clubs there and things like that. And then kind of work got in the way for a very long time, and ended up in France about 8 years ago, and had a bit more time on my hands, so picked up a camera again. Started enjoying photography again, really.
This is with the SLR, or have you switched to digital by then?
Oh, it was digital by then. As soon as digital came out and it was affordable, I'd switched to digital. It just made so much more sense.
Have you touched film at all since then?
No, not at all.
It's interesting because I've just been dabbling with some film cameras recently, and they haven't come out as well as I expected. And as it turns out, I found out, talking to the guy, they've been through an X-ray machine at the airport, and I think they've been affected by that. So I've got to run a little bit more of an experiment. But I am wondering whether to just ditch the film cameras altogether.
Yeah, it's funny because I just a few weeks ago bought a Fuji film camera, more as a nostalgia piece than actually to use it, to be honest. And it's kind of something I've toyed with, but I don't know.
It is a strange thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Once you jump that fence, you're never going to cross back over, are you?
No.
Yeah.
So, yeah, when I was in France, I kind of had this idea of being a famous wildlife photographer. I love wildlife, and I was, spending hours in a field and trying to take pictures of things, and then realizing that to do it really well professionally, you needed to spend a lot of money, which I didn't have to buy the lenses, and I also didn't have, 12 hours a day to sit waiting for something to happen. So I just really then concentrated on local landscapes and family and things like that. Then decided maybe I could make a career out of it, and started to photograph people. I got my local baker in France, to allow me to spend the day with him, and I did kind of a private commercial shoot with him, and we followed him around. So that's really a passion of mine as well, is environmental portraits. I love to just sit and photograph people doing their thing. I don't really like particularly posed photographs. I like to sort of just watch them and just take pictures as I go. And that shoot is kind of a bit of a coincidence. I met up with a marketing person, and they saw these pictures and liked them and said, "We've got this other shoot at a factory, would you come and do this for us?" And I did that for them. They wanted pictures of their factory, but I did some portraits of people there as they worked as well. And portraits were the ones they actually ended up using, even though that's not what they wanted. And that was just 3 years ago now, really, and it's kind of gone from there.
So are we now still carrying on with our IT work, or is that now basically
No, that's
by the wayside?
Fallen by the wayside.
Fallen by the wayside, full on into photography.
Yeah. And
that is just amazing when you think about it, because last week I was interviewing Martin Higgs, and he works nighttime as an IT engineer, and he does glamour stroke hairstyle stroke makeup type photography, an outstanding photographer, and he's obviously for the time being trying to make the two work together. And I think really the time is going to come where he's going to have to say, well, look, I can make enough money with my photography, the nighttime job can sort of step back. Obviously it's a question, if you've got a family and you've got to put food on the table, it's a little bit different probably from maybe a younger person and a single person, where they can sort of just go for it if they want to. I'm making a little bit of an assumption there, but it's that's the way I think it works for younger photographers.
Oh, I don't know. I've got a family to feed.
Well, there you go. See, I was totally wrong on that front. Didn't get my information through properly on that area. So let's talk about this commercial photography. You're now shooting DSLR. What equipment was your favoured equipment at the time, Matthew?
At the time, I was shooting Nikon, so
right.
I had a D300 and a lot of professional, very heavy lenses.
Yep.
And it was just kind of what sort of moved me on was I spent a day in Paris with a backpack full of all the gear I owned, because I thought at the time that's what I needed to carry around to get pictures that you needed to sell. And at the end of the day, I was just dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Been there many times myself.
Yeah.
With a bag full of just in case gear, as I call it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you end up using one of the bodies and one of the lenses, and
that's right. Yeah, it's just crazy. So that's an interesting point you mentioned there. So you're walking around Paris now with a backpack, DSLR, loads of equipment. What was the idea behind the Paris walkabouts? Was it just to pick up experience of taking... this is not really street photography, is it? Am I right? Is it more sort of abstract images of architectural work and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I don't tend to really do street photography. I do occasionally, but it's not really my thing. I appreciate it, but I think street photography, the term can be a bit overused sometimes.
Yeah.
I like to concentrate on details of things, so I'll pick out maybe, like you say, some abstract details and bits and pieces like that. But Paris, I just happened to be there. I was dropping somebody off at the airport and had the day free, so just spent the day there and had a bit of fun taking pictures.
What a place to have a free day to walk about.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's an unbelievable city, isn't it? Unbelievable. So many different things you can see. As you know, you can have the modern part down at La Défense area, or you can lose yourself up at Montmartre there with all the artists, or just generally walk around all the other famous places. I think one of the things I like personally about Paris is it's low level. You haven't got a lot of skyscrapers like you have in London, or even in New York if you're things. So the light is totally different in Paris than it would be in the majority of cities that we're ever likely to visit in Europe.
Yeah, it's a beautiful city.
And the other thing I've also found is that with a lot of other cities outside of France, they're very modern for obvious reasons. Unfortunately, because of after the war, a lot of buildings were rebuilt.
Yeah.
They're all very, very much the same, very square, no real character to them. Whereas Paris and obviously London has managed to keep its character.
Yeah.
So we're getting close, I think, by the way we're talking about with regards to your history of photography. We're getting close to the time when the Nikon gear is getting a little bit heavy. Nikon are not really coming through with anything innovative that is going to reduce your camera gear. Would I be right on that front?
Yeah. At the time, they weren't really doing anything, so I started looking around. Go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, we just touched on it just before, because we both had the Nikon V1, which I must be honest, when I first saw this being talked about on the rumour site, I thought this is going to be the camera, but unfortunately, whichever way you look at it, they decided to go down the 1-inch sensor route, and they made, in my opinion, the camera too small for my hands. How did you find using the V1?
I actually really liked the V1. I mean, I used it more as a family sort of camera because it was quite quick, which you have going for it. But like I say, it was quite small, didn't have much lens choice, so I couldn't really consider using it more professionally, should we say. And the image quality with the 1-inch sensor was still, you know, not quite there.
It was on the borderline, wasn't it? To be honest with you, I went to Lille, a lovely town in France there, where I took some interior shots of a cathedral, and I managed to print them to A3, and they were outstanding. They really were outstanding. But it's just the size of the camera which I couldn't really get on with. So anyway, it's your story, not mine. You've tried out the V1, so I think we're getting close to the time where you're looking around for another system.
I went through several actually. I just happened upon an Olympus EP1 in the sales.
Okay.
And I bought that thinking it would be a supplement to my Nikons, and I really enjoyed that camera. I like the look of it. It was a bit slow, but for the size of it, the image quality was pretty good, and they had, even at that time, they had a reasonable sort of range of lenses for the Micro Four Thirds. But it still didn't quite match the sort of image quality that I was getting out of my Nikon. So I then moved on to the Sony NEX, which had the APS-C size sensor. And again, I quite liked the camera. I liked some of the lenses, but it was more computer than camera to me.
Yeah.
It didn't quite gel with that camera.
Yeah. Which NEX did you have?
I had the 5, and then I changed that for the 5N.
Yeah. I was fortunate to see the NEX 7 when it first was introduced into the UK at a Sony presentation, and they were showing the translucent mirror which they were trying to develop in their SLRs at the same time. And I picked up the NEX 7, and the guys were using, I think it was the Alpha 77 at the time, and they couldn't believe that what they were doing on their big SLR camera, the DSLR, I was doing exactly the same thing on the NEX 7. Yeah. But the one thing about the NEX, because I ended up buying the NEX 3 just as a backup to my Nikon gear, was the menu system. Oh, yeah. The menu system just drove me round the bend. But the main thing at the end of the day was I just couldn't see anything in bright sunlight on the back of the screen. Even if I did tilt the screen, I was just totally lost. Yeah. So that is what swerved me away from NEX, which sounds to me as though you're going down the same sort of route that I did with the NEX. What came after the Sonys?
What came after the Sonys? Well, kind of at the same time, really, I guess. As I think a lot of photographers did, sort of lusted after the X100 when it came out.
Yeah.
Oh, this is just like the camera I want. And I bought the X100 not too long after it came out with the original firmware on it, and just loved the camera, but it was so frustrating to use. It was just like a nightmare camera to use, but when you got everything right, the images out of it were fantastic.
Yeah.
But as I said, it was so frustrating, I actually sent it back.
Really?
Yeah, I sent it back. And then a few months later, I just thought, I can't not have that camera. I really missed that. There was something about it that I just had never experienced with another camera. And you actually hear a lot of Fuji photographers say this, and I guess maybe if you're not into Fuji, you maybe think they're a bit, what they're going on about.
Yeah,
but it's absolutely true. You really get an attachment to them. So I bought another one, and that one had the problem with the aperture blades getting stuck after about a month, so I sent that one back as well.
Oh dear, right.
Slightly frustrated.
Yeah.
So my sort of journey into Fuji wasn't exactly ideal. It wasn't the perfect marriage to start with. And I bought an Olympus EP3, I think it was, by then, and that was a lot faster, than anything else out there. Really, they sort of really developed it. But again, I was missing that Fuji. So the black Fuji X100 came out, and I'm having that one.
Yeah.
So I bought the black one, and then really stuck with it. By then, the firmware had been updated a couple of times, and it was starting to come together. I mean, this is one of the things about Fuji. They really do listen to what people are saying, and instead of just perhaps some of the other manufacturers that I won't mention just release another camera, they will actually improve the existing cameras.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the Nex 7. I actually had a Nex 7 on pre-order, and then the OMD was announced, and then I cancelled that and put the OMD on pre-order, and then happened to walk into my local camera store, Wilkinson's, and they had the X Pro 1. It had literally just come out. I think it was just happened to walk in on the first day they had it out, and I wasn't too sure. I tried it out in the shop and took the pictures home and just was like, wow.
Yeah.
Went back the next day, cancelled my OMD order and bought the X Pro 1.
Yeah.
And just the 35mm lens at the time. And then not long after I bought the 18, and then later on the 60. So I had the X Pro with the 3 primes that came out.
Yeah. And what's happened with your Nikon gear in the meantime? Have you still got it? Is it gathering dust, or has that gone on eBay?
The Nikon gear, I still had it when I had my X Pro 1, when I bought that. But the more I started to use the X Pro, the less it got used, and not long after it all went on eBay and disappeared, and
it's just gone. Yeah,
it's gone. I did when I started to pick up more work. I bought myself a D800 because I thought, starting to
megapixels.
In megapixels, and I should look like a photographer, really.
Yeah.
And had it for 2 months and thought, I don't need this camera. The Fujis do everything I need, even the X Pro 1, which was slow and was nothing like a D800. It did what I needed it to do.
Yeah.
So the D800 lasted 2 months before it went, because I was again going back to big backpack full of stuff again, and that's
Exactly. For me, situation very, very similar type pattern, not at the same level of gear that you tried out, but for me it was Nikon to Nikon V1, which I really thought was going to replace all my other Nikon gear. Remembering, I'm not professional here by any sense, stretch of the imagination, but it was the amount of gear that I had, and then seeing the infamous videos from Zach Arias, Jim Marks as well, I think, was another photographer talking about the X100, and then the S, and then David Hobby, and then all the other guys that followed suit, Kevin Mullins, and the names of the list of guys that I can mention, which don't come to mind straight away. I thought Fuji are definitely onto something. I was fortunate to go into Jessop's, had just reopened in Birmingham, and they had the Fuji lineup, the X Pro, the XE1, and obviously the X100 at the time. And I picked up the camera, and this guy came up and had a chat with me, and we were talking about it. He knew everything about the camera, which really, really amazed me. The amount of times I've been into shops in the UK where the salesmen just do not know what camera you've picked up. They don't understand the intricacies of them at all. And I just said to him, I said, well, really what I would like to see is what does it print like? When you take the photograph, it's all well and good looking at the back of the camera with all those millions of pixels on the back of the camera. What does it print like? And he said, well, I'll show you. And he gave me a book. And it was a Fuji book of these photographs taken with either the XE1 or the X Pro 1. Yeah. Sold. It was just such a simple thing, which, to be quite honest with you, I don't understand why other shops don't do it. And I said, right. I said, as soon as I get home, I live in south of London, so Birmingham to south of London, got home, all the Nikon gear, one on eBay, sold that, and bought myself the XE1 with the 1855. And from that, one camera, one lens was born. Since then, I've added a couple of lenses because I've developed a little bit more in my street photography, which I want to do, but I still go out with just one camera and one lens, which is similar to what we were talking about just before. This is very interesting, the way that your camera gear has developed into solely just Fuji gear, and of course that brings us neatly into what you're now doing in terms of developing accessories for the user of Fuji equipment, and I must say I've bought one particular item from you, the grip to fit the XE1, and it's extremely well made, and it really does add to the feel for the XE1, and hats off to you with a great development of that particular product. I know there are others out there, but I must be honest, I think your particular grip that you've produced there is out of the top slot. Before we go to talk more about your accessories, because I'm fingers crossed you maybe have some other items to show us there, Matthew. Shall we go to screen share and let's have a look at some of your commercial work, which hoping the guys will be interested to see this. This one, and then this is where it all goes funny now, doesn't it? I don't know, I get this tunnel vision every time. Bear with me while I... So you should see that. I click on my... Sorry about the tunnel vision. Do you now just see a single screen, or have you got that tunnel?
No, I've got the whole screen there.
Okay, that's great. So I'm in your hands. If I click on one of these images, it's going to take me to a slide screen, is it?
Should do.
Okay. Okay. We won't go through
the landscape work is not what I really do. I mean, I do that because I live in the Lake District, and how can you not shoot landscapes?
Exactly, yeah.
Lake District? It's more of a personal thing, and I just kind of enjoy. I'm always up really early in the morning, so I just wander out with my camera. And
this is beautiful image here.
That's.
Can you tell us what sort of equipment have you used there, Matthew?
That was a good question. I think that's the X Pro 1 with the 14mm on it and an ND filter.
Sure. Beautiful shot.
Yeah.
Beautiful shot. Let's move on. Hauptbahnhof.
Yes, that was last Photokina, actually.
That's the last Photokina in Cologne.
I think maybe no, I think that was Christmas time actually.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
That was Christmas time. We went over there for the Christmas markets, which is a great experience.
Yeah, it is indeed.
I mean, if you want to do more photography travel, just travel and don't spend your money on another lens. Go and travel with what you've got. Yeah,
very true. Wise words. Wise words. There's a few shots here of this athlete. Bit of commission work for Adidas, was it, or was it just for this athlete?
No, it was for both of us actually. I'm developing a portfolio of images of outdoor sports in the Lake District, which I'm then going to take to people like the clothing manufacturers and the local tourist board and local shops and say, I can do this. Are you interested in, me taking any photographs for you? So this was kind of, she wanted some shots and I wanted some shots, and we just sort of worked something out together, and I got a nice little portfolio there. So yeah, you got a few images up here of there. So these are all shot. That was shot on the X100S. Okay. And one of the great things about the X100S is the flash sync. That was synced with an Elinchrom Quadra up to 1,000th of a second. This was a fairly bright afternoon, early evening, and with the 1,000th of a second, you basically kill off all the ambient light on it, and then she's then lit with the flash. With the stripe, yeah, brilliant. I thought I recognised this golfer when you first. It's not me. But it's not you. Is it a professional golfer or is it just a friend? He's trying to be a professional golfer. Right, okay. So these were shot at the local golf club, which again is kind of fitting in with my theme. You'll see I think if you maybe go through some, you'll see some shots of the lakes in the background. I can't remember how many I put on there. That was shot with the X100S. No. Yeah, this is another beautiful landscape here. Yeah, that was shot with the X1M actually, which is like the cheap version of the X series cameras, and that shot has had quite a lot of exposure. It's been published twice, which
Right.
kind of goes to show you
Fantastic.
don't really need. That was actually shot also with the really cheap 16 to 50 kit lens,
Yeah.
and you know, you don't need to go and buy the expensive gear to get
No.
the shots that sell.
How much editing process have you put into this? Do you use Lightroom or another process?
I use Lightroom, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been pushed and pulled a little bit, but not
Of course.
enormously.
Yeah. No, the quality. That's a RAW file or JPEG file?
Don't remember.
Don't remember.
I shoot a lot of JPEGs nowadays.
Right. Okay.
I think that was probably a RAW because, if I remember rightly, it was a pano of 2 or 3 images. Again, that was the XM1. We're being chased down by a rainstorm behind us on that.
Yeah, you know, it is amazing when you think about it that someone not knowing the equipment would look at that and not realise that is effectively taken with a camera like an XM1, which is, as you say, is a quality camera. But I don't know whether it's one in the stable of the Fuji camera, which is probably overlooked a little bit too often.
Yeah, it very much is, and I actually think it's a great little camera, especially because it was the first one with the flip screen on it,
Yeah.
and the first one with Wi-Fi. So it was one that actually moved a lot of things on when the others were still a bit outdated almost.
Yeah. There's another one from the portfolio. Let's just come out of this for a second, and one particular image. These images here, I really like here. This. Let's go to this one here. Old Jetty, beautiful ND filter as well by the looks of things.
ND filter. What I've been doing is, because I don't want to shoot the same. I know there is one fluffy cloud landscape there, but I don't want to shoot that sort of thing, and I try and set myself to sort of push myself really and improve my photography. I set myself little projects. So I set myself a project to shoot a series of Windermere that were all shot with the Fuji. I think they were all shot with 35mm lens. They were all shot with a 10-stop ND filter, 30 seconds, same processing, and they were all shot with the waterline exactly across the middle and all cropped in the same way.
Right. Okay.
Kind of create a little mini series, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I'm with you. I can see where you're coming from.
It just if you create a series of similar images, it makes it look like it was done deliberately instead of having a lot of random different sort of stuff. I mean, I know there's quite a bit of few different styles on this site actually.
Yeah. But you see, that's the type of thing which I would expect to see if someone's creating a panel for some kind of maybe a competition or looking to get some kind of certificate where they've decided on a particular style, which is clear this is, and then you're working on it from there. Oh, that's lovely.
That one.
That is
I did
lovely.
shoot that. That's not a long exposure actually. I did shoot that with long exposure, but the trouble was the masts were all kind of waving about a bit, and they looked a bit odd when it was shot on long exposure. So that one wasn't, and that shot has actually been licensed a couple of times as well. So
beautiful.
Sometimes when you're doing personal stuff, it does pay as well.
Yeah, exactly right. And then the dance.
Yeah.
Nice one.
I had this idea. That's the one I prefer, actually.
Yes, I do as well.
To get a dancer to just come and do some dance moves on the jetty. It was just a personal project, really.
Yeah.
It's a bit of fun.
And I think you're right. Doing personal projects to enhance your skills. I really don't know why why I get the tunnel vision. I must try and work that one out. There must be a reason for it. I think going back to what I'm saying, doing personal projects like that develops your skills for obviously your commercial work, and obviously by doing that, obviously you get better as we go on.
Yeah, you do,
Um,
and I think personal work is really important because it gives
yeah,
you the chance to be creative. I mean, a lot of the time, commercial work doesn't often give you that chance. You kind of
yeah,
shoot what the customer wants. But it gets you used to using your camera as well. So when you do the commercial jobs, you just know your camera inside out, which is really important when you're under pressure in front of a client. You know, you don't
exactly
want to be
right.
sitting there. You know, where's the
No,
setting
no,
for this?
exactly. Where's the settings? Yeah, I'm lost it. And it's got to be second hand, isn't it?
Yeah,
You're quite right. You're quite right.
and it is quite surprising how if you don't shoot quite regularly, how quickly your eye sort of falls off it, and you
Yep.
tend to lose. You know, I try and shoot it every day if I can. I don't always get the chance.
No.
It is important to just keep shooting all the time.
Well, if you look at it from every other aspect, any other hobby which becomes a job, you know, the footballer practices his free kicks, the
Mm.
golfer practices his golf swing, probably sometimes without hitting the golf ball, to basically enhance the skill so that when he's under pressure, in the case of a photographer out doing the work and has got to produce work, it becomes second nature. He doesn't have to worry about, oh, got to get this shot, got to get this shot, and it's
Yeah.
just second nature, and you can take the shot. It's a little bit of a psychological play on yourself, and so that everything becomes subconscious, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because actually the golfer I was speaking to said um, he plays with his dad, and his dad's an okay golfer, but he said he thinks too much. He said
Yeah.
sometimes you've just got to let yourself do what comes natural, and when you practice, it then just becomes natural.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah, the subconscious mind. Yeah, I'm a firm believer that someone says, I don't know why I took that shot, but I just took it, and it's come out just as how I wanted. And I think something in the back of the mind, if you have got a photographic mind and a view of what you want to take, that trigger, for want of word, from your brain to the finger just happens, and you capture that moment. And the same as any sport, you know, with any sport or any job really, I suppose. Um, let's talk about your accessory development, Matthew. As I said, I've got the grip to fit the XE1, which I'm absolutely delighted with. Just started to create the thumb grip for a number of the Fuji cameras now.
Yes.
How are things are developing on that front for you?
Surprisingly well. I mean, the accessories development wasn't really a deliberate thing. I don't know. I got the X Pro 1 here. I don't know if anybody had the original Fuji grip that came with this, but it blocked the entirety of the bottom of the camera. So
Yep.
if you wanted to get to your SD card, every time you had to take it off.
Yep.
I mean, it's great sometimes having a small camera, but I kind of prefer having a bit of a still prefer having a bit of a hold on the camera.
Yeah, very true.
And it just really frustrated me. So I kind of thought there's got to be a better way than that. And the X Pro 1 grip was the first one I did, and it was something that I thought I wanted. It wasn't something that I thought, oh, I'll go and make lots of money out of this. It was
No.
something I thought, there's got to be something better, and I couldn't find it. So I started developing one on my own,
Yeah,
and it just kind of went from there, really.
that's really good. Now
Um,
you just started to release the thumb grip to fit the cameras.
yeah, I mean, I don't know if you can see that one there. This is a prototype, so it's a little bit,
Yep.
it's painted. I mean, the originals will be anodized, but again, it was something that came about from my own experience. I like to be able to hold it like that. I could find a thumb grip for it, but it was incredibly expensive, one that was
Yeah, I know.
designed for it. And the generic ones, the cheap ones you can get on eBay and Amazon, they were never quite in the right place, and they didn't never really fit right. And I thought, well, if I want one of these, probably somebody else does. So
Yeah,
I started
exactly
designing a
right.
thumb grip, and I've designed one for each of the cameras. So the X Pro 1, the XE1, and the X100. The X Pro 1's nearly ready to go, and the X100 is not far behind. So hopefully I'll have them out soon. I've got some prototypes made up here.
And that basically, like the other design, slots into the
Hot
shoe
shoe,
at the
yeah.
top of the camera, the hot shoe, and then is it an Allen key grip to hold it in place?
It
Doesn't
isn't.
slip? It isn't.
It's going to have a silicone friction on it. Because
Okay.
I'm not too keen on the Allen key tightening things down on your hot shoe, really.
Yeah, that's one of the things that. Well, I got one of those cheapy ones from eBay, and that's one of the things that worries me. It does the job, but it did worry me actually as I was tightening up to make sure it doesn't slip out, so to speak. But it is an important position to have that thumb grip, because on the XE1 you've got the wheel there, which you use for the quick menu, and then of course when you actually turn the camera for a portrait shot, your thumb does have a tendency to slip onto the Q menu button and the AE locking button as well. So that grip does become, again, second nature when you're using it.
Yeah, it does. Actually, on the X Pro 1, I put tape over the Q button and the AE lock because I pressed it so often.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Have you got anything else in line which you're thinking about that you can reveal to us, or is it hush hush at the moment?
Not particularly that I can reveal. I'm adding a few third-party products, so things like I've got here the three-legged thing tripods and Peak Design straps and stuff like that. Stuff that I find useful when I use my Fujis.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm a photographer and I use them quite a lot. And
yeah, exactly.
If I find these things useful, then hopefully somebody else will find them useful.
Well, I think it's important that you're developing a product which you're going to use, as you say. If you need it, then there's more than likely a photographer out there with a Fuji camera is going to want it as well.
Yeah.
Coming round now from your products, you obviously just come back from Photokina, this biannual show in Cologne, where I think the majority of camera company gears themselves to bring out a new product. Fuji released, I know of 2 cameras that they definitely released, and Nikon released a camera, and Canon 2 cameras. How did you find Photokina yourself, Matthew?
Oh, it's fantastic. Photokina just blows any other camera show out the water. It's absolutely enormous. It's the one to go for too. It tends, I mean, the photography show is really good. If you're a consumer, the photography show is probably more aimed at you because it's got things to buy there, and it's more aimed at the consumer. Whereas Photokina, as a consumer, it is a good place to go, but there's not a lot to buy. It's kind of more aimed at trade, really.
Yeah.
But you know, if you're a camera enthusiast, it's 10 holes of everything you could possibly imagine.
Yeah, exactly.
And the Fuji stand this year, they've really gone all out. I mean,
well, I saw the photographs of the stand, and the stand at NEC this year was big enough. Obviously, in my industry, I've seen bigger, but that's beside the point. And I was quite impressed with the Fuji stand and what they were showing, because the XT1 had just come out at that stage. So what? It's probably a silly question. We know what cameras they were showing. What's your view on the new cameras that were shown by Fuji this particular show?
I think they're a good development. Strangely, the X30 is probably the one that I'm most interested in.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the X20, and I think the X30 is just a nice development on that, and will probably become my everyday carry-around camera.
Right. Okay.
I mean, the image quality is still not quite X100. There's still a fair jump up to the X100.
Yeah.
For an everyday camera, and you could probably shoot with it commercially if you didn't need huge prints.
This is the thing, actually. If you are a photographer where your work is going to be printed, that's obviously the main thing which you have to think about. I'm interested in the fact that it's a 2/3 inch sensor. And I'm very interested now that there was Nikon leading the way with a 1 inch, and it just got totally panned because of the size of the sensor itself. I noticed now that Sony have followed suit, Canon have followed suit with their 1 inch sensor. But from what I can work out and from what I've read, there's not a great deal of loss of detail from the Fuji 2/3 to the 1-inch sensors in those three cameras I've mentioned. Could you make any comment on that at all?
No, no, there isn't. I mean, I've tested it against the RX100, and it's as close as you're going to get. It
Right.
really. The Fuji, I mean, I used the XQ1 quite a lot, which has got the same 2/3 inch sensor, and this is slightly faster than the RX100 version 2, probably because it's got a slightly smaller sensor.
Yes.
But the image quality is as close as you're going to get.
Yeah.
To it.
And I'm a firm believer. I don't know whether you've used the plug-in from on one software called Resize. I don't know whether you've tried it at all.
I haven't.
But I've tried the Resize program on that side, and I tell you, you can take an iPhone image and create a quality image bigger than an A4, and the detail is very, very good. So if anyone is looking at a 2/3 inch sensor image and is worried about increasing the size to a decent sized print, then I think using something like Resize from on one software would be a very good little purchase for you. Fantastic results from that little program.
Yeah, well,
so
I've used the X Pro 1, and I shot. It was just a personal thing, but it was a field in the morning with some sheep in it, and that was picked up by an Australian company, and they printed that along the length of an HGV lorry.
Really?
So, you don't need to be shooting medium format necessarily.
No, this is it. This is it.
Like that and get people who want them.
And I know that one of the things which was we haven't even talked about the 100T yet. One of the disappointments for the show was the X Pro 2, which I think some guys thought that maybe Fuji were going to hold this one back for the show itself. And is it going to be full frame? I don't think Fuji are going to go that way, to be quite honest with you. I think X Pro is definitely in the X camp, the 1.5 sensor camp. Whether they go down the medium format, time will tell on that. Let's come back to the 100T though. It's had some very good reviews. I've seen Zach Arias has made some good comments, and David Hobby sneaked a few images out on Flickr by mistake and was promptly told to remove them. But what was your view on the 100T?
Actually, David Hobby didn't have a 100T.
No, really?
No, what happened was they tweaked his camera to give him the classic chrome film simulation.
Yeah.
Then put the X100T as the EXIF data.
Ah, right, okay.
The X100T. I used it. It's a bit quicker than the X100S. I quite like the new feel to the dials. They've done a slightly different feel on the dials. In terms of features, you've got Wi-Fi now, which I think had to come to it really. Trying to think what else there was that came to it, to be honest.
Well, obviously the talk is of this new film effect.
The film effect, yeah, but also the hybrid viewfinder.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
They have added that, and I don't really know what to feel about it. I started using the OVFs, but had so many shots out of focus, I gave up, and now I just use the EVF, even the rear screen a lot of the time. And I have used it, and it is. I mean, there's no arguing that the implementation of it is brilliant. It's a great idea. If you're a manual focus shooter, it's a great idea. But it's kind of, when you're doing it, it takes your eye off the photograph.
Yep.
And you're looking, there's a little screen in the corner which you have to look down to see if it's in focus. And as you focus, it moves the frame lines in the display as well. So you've got to concentrate on the screen, you've got to concentrate on where these frame lines are moving and on what you're taking pictures of. And to me, the implementation is fantastic, and the idea, but I don't know if I really want to use it in the real world.
Sounds a big learning curve there for just that using that particular part of the camera. I've spoken to quite a few guys now. I remember talking to Alex Lambrecht, who in actual fact using his X100S and I think the XT1 now, which he uses, a lot of his work is done using the back screen. Very rarely does he put the camera to his eye. It's just the way I think the majority of photographers are now preferring to work. assuming they can see what's on the back of the screen. I think there's still this issue when it's a very bright day that I think you're going to get a problem. But from what I can see, I think it's a preferred way of shooting now.
It is, and it's funny once you get used to it. It's a really nice way to shoot because you still have some interaction with your subject. You're not hiding behind the camera.
Yeah.
And I actually remember when I got the XT1, I was shooting mostly with the back screen. And as you say, when it's bright sunlight, sometimes you can't see it quite so well.
Yeah.
I was struggling with it, and then I suddenly remembered, oh, I've got a viewfinder.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So you got the best of both worlds. Then it's one of the reasons why I bought the XE1 myself after using the Nex 3 viewfinder. It worked in quite nicely for me. So your future plans then, Matthew? Obviously, keep going with the commercial photography, but it seems to me from what you were saying earlier on, this accessory development may start gathering pace. Is it something which you feel as though you really want to get stuck into, or is it something you just want to do as a nice little tidy little business on its own and carry on with the photography?
No, it's picking up surprisingly well, and it wasn't, as I said, it wasn't expected. I didn't deliberately go out there to start a company selling accessories. It was just I would like this, and I couldn't get it, so I just decided to do it.
Yeah.
But it's doing better, and hopefully with the thumb grips, things will pick up a bit there more, and I'm getting a lot more interest from people now. Yeah,
you are. Yeah. So I noticed the reaction on your Facebook when you started showing the photographs. And what was interesting, in actual fact, I just realised I meant to mention it earlier on. To the side of you there, you've got your grip shown, and of course that's in an anodized blue. There's different colours as well, which adds that little bit more to the marketing opportunities and availability for people. Red, blue, silver,
titanium. It is.
There's titanium. That's the new one, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean the vast majority of the ones I sell are black, and that kind of goes with the camera. Yeah. But I mean, to be honest, I use the blue on my X100, and I quite like it. It's just adds a personal thing to it.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the big things at the moment, isn't it? So it's what do they call it now? It's pimp your camera, isn't it? Now with all these little things you can add on, and red buttons and dangly bits and flashy straps and the like.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to ask you now was, and I think when we had the chat before we started the show, the photographer that inspires you most. Can you be finite and say there is one particular photographer?
Yeah, as I said, the trouble is a lot of different photographers inspire me for different reasons.
Yeah.
I think if I had to pick one, and we have mentioned him, it would probably be Alex Lambrecht's.
Yeah.
Because he's very different to other people. He's not. I don't want to insult him here. He's not what I would call a technical photographer, and he doesn't worry about how many megapixels something's got. He doesn't worry if this isn't quite right. He makes the camera do what he wants, and he just gets some fantastic images. So it's just very different from everybody else. And I think perhaps part of that is he didn't come from a traditional photography background.
Yeah.
Kind of come into it as a commercial arts sort of person and just done what he wants to do. And he's obviously been very successful in it in recent years.
Well, he has. I remember talking to Jerry Walden, another Fuji X user, about Alex, and Jerry likened him to a modern-day David Bailey, on the basis the way David Bailey transformed 35mm photography and pushed the boundaries. I think we're now seeing someone like Alex, and there are other photographers. I'm not going down one particular street, but Alex does produce something which, at the moment, I'm not seeing anything like at the moment, and particularly in the field which he's managed to develop his career in the glamour and in the lifestyle photography with the magazines and the like. It really is very, very interesting work. I've been very fortunate enough to be on a workshop with Alex. Tremendous teacher. I learned a lot from him, and I've also been fortunate enough to interview him on this show. Very opinionated about photography and what people should be doing. And another thing which I noticed about him, he studies photography endlessly.
Yeah, he does. He does very much so. He's very much somebody who will study what others are doing and
exactly, yeah,
past work of masters and say what is it that made them great.
Exactly right. Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm pleased you mentioned him because I can 100% back you up on that. I think he is one of the most refreshing photographers we've seen for the last few years, in actual fact. And as you know, there's a hell of a lot of them out there that are producing fantastic work. This has worked out really well, actually, Matthew, because we've come up to the time that we allotted for this show. All the links to Matthew's website, Facebook, Twitter links, I'll be putting on the blog, as I always do. I'll put that up on Monday, and I'll be posting that out to all the relevant social sites that I put my work out on. It's just to say thank you so much for joining me today, Matthew, especially with all the charging around you've been doing. In Photokina, you've been back, what, 24, 48 hours from Photokina?
24 hours, yeah.
24 hours, I was going to say, yeah, 24 hours. And it's all well and good going to walk around these shows, but it's not easy because, you know, if you're involved and you're having business discussions and then you're going to go and look at it, it is a busy time. You know, I've seen many a delegate walking around an exhibition. It can be exhausting work, never alone about standing on a stand and selling the product.
No, it is exhausting, and Photokina is so huge. You just spend, hours on your feet getting anywhere.
There's no doubt about it. The German halls they're enormous. Whichever one you go to, whether it's Munich, Cologne, the one in Frankfurt is enormous as well. But they are just so geared to putting on quality exhibitions. It's when I go out there to do work out, it really is a pleasure to work in German halls, you know, and their efficiency, it's absolutely superb. And I must go to Photokina. That's 2 years away now. I must make an effort to go in a couple of years' time because I'd like to see what. Never been to Cologne, so I'd like to give that a thought.
No, beautiful city.
Say again?
Beautiful city as well to visit.
Yeah, lovely city. Yeah, I've driven past it, but I haven't stopped off. Anyway, Matthew, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I hope the viewers will enjoy the show if they watch it later on YouTube. A little bit of an insight to Matthew's career and the products that he's developing through his, which you can go onto Facebook and get the links and go onto his website. Great insight into Fuji as well, which is, for me, fantastic because I want to know more about what's going on with the Fuji guys, and it's been great to talk to you, and then finally just to talk about your inspired photographer, which was really nice to talk about Alex. That was great. So thank you, Matthew, for joining me, and yes, folks, it's the end of the show, and well, if you're going out this weekend, leave your camera bag at home. All the best to you. Bye for now.